have, you know, a range here operating. I think this involves always some reductionism, and this is what this project will try to invert in a way. Now, there you have a different kind of thing. It's a dance piece we did in another project. How would you translate that to an emoticon? Can you? Would any of this work? Well, I suggest that maybe it's not quite possible. It would always involve, here you see it more clearly, a very strong reductionism of expression. I don't know if you agree, but that's at least the way I see it. Huge reductionism to try to reduce that to something like this. What about this? If it's moving, even, you know, how many emoticons per second would you need to really translate that into a recognizable given pattern of information? Can we do that? Is it legitimate? Is it ethical? Now, funnily enough, we are becoming emoticons. Maybe you know some of these projects that are going on nowadays, that your facial expression is going to be analyzed so that you can communicate with a machine. For example, for choosing the program you're watching in an interactive television, so you have to go like this if you like it. The systems are not very sophisticated now, and of course they can only analyze types of faces, you know, white men in Europe, whatever, you know. Because the specificity of each body, not only morphologically, but from a movement perspective, from an expression, from a perspective of expression, is so irreducible that hopefully those systems will never work. But what they will probably start to do, if they are not already doing it, is that we start to try to match them. We try to align ourselves with those representations. This is very strongly the case in a very well-known game called Dance Central. Have you heard about Dance Central? Where you have a Kinect motion capture or motion analysis system. You have to be facing a screen, and you have to try to match the movements of the avatar, but of course you don't match the movements, you match positions. So there's some multiple levels of reductionism. You have to win a competition if you match as many points as possible, fixed elements of a given choreography of commercial music in an avatar, with the limitations of the motion analysis system. So what is being reproduced in that fabulous example is an, in my view, extreme example of a culture that places repetition, imitation, so the non-new in the highest pedestal. Okay? What ethical implications does that have? We'll leave it there for the moment. So there are at the same time many people working in more marginal, less kind of mainstream research fields, trying to develop more sensitive kind of technologies that try to become more aware of this irreducible elements of expression that are not so directly like reducible to a set of 3 or 4 or 5 emotions that are translatable to an emoticon and so on and so forth. Well, some of the partners involved in this project are actually working on this, as you will see. We can't go, I mean, this raises, of course, enormous questions. I can't go into all of them. We will swipe through some of them, but the issue of predictability, of course, is another huge ethical question. Not only ethical, it's a question of whether, after all, what is the sense of predicting everything all the time? For us, as people living in the world. What is the sense of predicting everything all the time? Because we seem to have attached a very high value to this. Most of us living in metropolitan areas of the 21st century. But really, what does this bring to us, other than assimilation into an economic regime that works on the basis of preemption? From my point of view, on the other hand, we could arrive to the other extreme very easily, from a philosophical perspective, for example. And some people are working on this, it's not just me. In fact, many of the people involved in this project are working along this line, where one could arrive easily to the conclusion that a livable, sustainable society needs space for the emergence of unpredictable novelty and non-functional relations, expressions and affects. Now, what this means, really, if we put it in a different way, is that what makes life livable eventually, especially if we try not to have an anthropocentric kind of vision, is not perhaps what structures everything in manners that make reality controllable, or attempt to make it controllable. But perhaps on the contrary, what is permanently escaping and exceeding a given control system. This is perhaps more easy to understand if we translate it to this issue of nonverbal communication. According to studies in nonverbal communication, about 93% of what is going on here in an interpersonal conversation is nonverbal. My sounds, my gestures, my spatial relation to you, and so on. So from that perspective, they say only 7% would be reducible to verbal meanings. I even question that. But anyway, what happens with this 93% really? Is it just an extension of the meaning of words? Or is it adding resonances to relations that are absolutely irreducible, but absolutely essential? I'm almost certain that each of you is generating resonances from what I'm saying now that are radically different in each of you. They are like affective impingements rather than meaning disseminations. So I wonder how important it is to take into account this differential element of our relations. So what makes our world livable, as I think you said or someone said before, is this permanent novelty that it brings to us at every moment, the way in which it is escaping the foreseeable and the predictable. And from my point of view, indeed, a permanently predictable world would be not only impossible, but also unlivable. How about then if we try to develop technological paradigms that instead of attempting to permanently reduce reality to predictable items, focuses on the other extreme, generating environments, relational environments that are foregrounding this unpredictable novelty that is emerging all the time. So it's like going to the other extreme of the mainstream agenda. So there's plenty of people working on different kinds of expressive movement analysis.